Captain Jake Morrison stood in the middle of the bridge and watched the screens in front of him. The stars looked cold and empty, but he knew better. Somewhere out there, alien ships were moving through space, carrying supplies and weapons to kill more humans. He had been hunting them for 3 weeks now, and today he would finally catch them. The UES Nightborne was not like other human ships. It was built in secret, designed to be invisible to enemy sensors. The hull was black as deep space, covered with special materials that absorbed light and heat. When the ship moved through the darkness, it left no trace behind. The aliens called it impossible, but humans had always been good at doing impossible things. Commander Lisa Hayes sat at her station, watching the tactical display with careful eyes. She had been Morrison's second in command for 2 years, ever since the war started. Her fingers moved across the control panel, adjusting the stealth systems to keep them hidden from the alien convoy ahead. The enemy ships showed up as red dots on her screen, moving in a straight line like they owned the galaxy. "Distance to target?" Morrison asked without turning around. 50,000 kilometers in closing, Hayes replied. "They still don't know we're here." Morrison smiled, but it was not a happy smile. The aliens had destroyed his home colony 6 months ago. Everyone he knew was dead, turned to ash by alien weapons. The Zephyrians said humans were too primitive to live among the stars. They said the galaxy belonged to advanced species only. Morrison was about to show them what primitive really meant. Down in the engine room, Chief Engineer Pete Collins worked over the quantum drive controls. Sweat ran down his face as he made tiny adjustments to keep the engine running silent. The drive was new technology, barely tested, but it was the only thing that let them move without being detected. One mistake, one wrong setting, and the aliens would see them coming from light years away. "Engine temperature is holding steady," Collins reported through his communicator. "But I don't know how much longer we can keep this up. The quantum core is running hot." "Hold it together, Pete," Morrison said. "We only need another hour." The alien convoy was made up of 5 ships, each one the size of a small city. They moved in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls catching the light from nearby stars. The Zephyrians loved beauty and order. Everything they built was elegant and graceful. Their ships looked like works of art floating through space. Lieutenant Amy Foster stood near the back of the bridge, checking her weapon for the 10th time. She commanded the Marine boarding teams, 20 of the toughest soldiers humanity had ever produced. They wore powered armor painted matte black, designed for fighting in the cramped corridors of enemy ships. Each Marine carried weapons that could punch through alien armor and explosives that could blow holes in reinforced bulkheads. "How many aliens on each ship?" Foster asked. "Scans show about 300 per vessel," Hayes answered. "Most of them are workers, not fighters. The Zephyrians don't expect attacks on their supply lines." "They're about to learn," Foster said, checking her rifle's ammunition counter. The war had started 2 years ago when the Zephyrian Collective decided that humans were a threat to galactic peace. They said human technology was advancing too fast, that humans were too aggressive and violent. The aliens formed a council and voted to remove humanity from the galaxy. It was all very civilized and proper, according to their laws. What the aliens did not understand was that humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They knew how to adapt, how to change tactics, how to do whatever it took to survive. The Zephyrians fought according to ancient rules and traditions. They challenged enemies to formal battles, gave warning before attacks, and treated war like a ritual dance. Humans treated war like what it really was, a fight to the death. Morrison had studied the alien battle records for months. Every fight followed the same pattern. The Zephyrians would approach an enemy fleet, broadcast a formal challenge, wait for a response, then engage in organized combat. Ships would line up in neat formations and trade fire until one side surrendered or retreated. It was warfare as art, warfare as ceremony. The Nightborne was humanity's answer to alien civilization. It was built to ignore the rules, to strike from shadows, to win by any means necessary. The ship carried no identification marks, sent no signals, gave no warnings. It was a predator designed to hunt other predators. "Captain, we're picking up alien communications," said Communications Officer Tony Reed. "They're discussing their next supply run to the front lines." Morrison walked over to Reed's station. "What are they saying?" "The usual stuff. They're talking about the glorious war, about cleansing the galaxy of human corruption. The fleet commander is giving speeches about honor and duty." "Let them talk," Morrison said. "Words won't help them when the shooting starts." The Nightborne moved closer to the convoy, its stealth systems bending light around the hull. To alien sensors, the ship was invisible, just another patch of empty space. Morrison had learned that the Zephyrians trusted their technology completely. They believed their sensors could detect any threat, that their shields could stop any weapon, that their superior civilization made them untouchable. Dr. Helen Carter, the ship's science officer, was analyzing the alien vessels from her station. She had been studying Zephyrian technology since the war began, looking for weaknesses. The aliens built their ships to be beautiful and efficient, but not necessarily strong. Their hulls were made of crystalline materials that could deflect energy weapons, but were vulnerable to physical impacts. "Their shield generators are located in the upper sections of each ship," Carter reported. "If we can get close enough, we can disable them with targeted strikes." "What about their weapon systems?" Morrison asked. "Powerful but slow to target. They're designed for long-range combat against ships that fight fair. Close-range attacks will catch them off guard." Morrison nodded. The plan was simple but dangerous. The Nightborne would approach the largest supply ship, disable its shields, and board it before the other vessels could respond. Once they captured the ship, they would have access to alien technology and intelligence about enemy movements. Foster gathered her Marines near the docking bay, going over the assault plan one more time. The aliens were taller than humans, with crystalline skin that could resist small arms fire. But they were also slower and less aggressive. They had lived in a peaceful galaxy for so long that they had forgotten how to fight dirty. "Remember, we go in fast and hard," Foster told her team. "No warnings, no mercy. These aliens want to wipe out our entire species. Show them what humans do to enemies." The Marines checked their weapons and armor, each one thinking about the friends and family they had lost to alien attacks. Some had been soldiers before the war, others had been farmers or teachers or mechanics. The war had turned them all into killers, and they were good at it. Morrison watched the alien convoy on the main screen, counting down the minutes until they would strike. The Zephyrians had no idea that death was approaching them through the darkness. They continued their broadcasts about honor and civilization, never suspecting that their enemy had already abandoned both concepts. The Nightborne was now less than 10,000 kilometers from the lead alien ship. Morrison could see the elegant curves of its hull, the way it caught starlight on its crystalline surface. Soon that beautiful ship would be a burning wreck, and its crew would be dead or captured. The aliens wanted to destroy humanity. Because they thought humans were savage and primitive, they were about to discover that sometimes savage and primitive was exactly what you needed to survive in a hostile galaxy. The war was about to change, and the Zephyrians would learn that their greatest mistake was underestimating the species they had decided to exterminate. The Nightborne moved like a ghost through space, closing the final distance to the alien supply ship. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display as his ship approached its target. The alien vessel was massive, almost twice the size of the Nightborne, but size would not matter in what was about to happen. "Docking clamps ready," reported Chief Engineer Pete Collins from his station. "The alien hull is thin where we're attaching. Their ships aren't built to resist boarding." Morrison nodded. The Zephyrians had never needed to worry about enemies coming aboard their vessels. In their civilized galaxy, warfare was conducted at long range with energy weapons and missiles. The idea of soldiers fighting hand-to-hand inside a ship was foreign to them. That was about to change. Lieutenant Amy Foster stood in the docking bay with her 20 Marines, each one dressed in black-powered armor. The suits were designed specifically for fighting aliens, with enhanced strength and built-in weapon systems. The Marines had trained for months to fight in the narrow corridors of enemy ships, learning to move fast and strike hard. "Remember the plan?" Foster told her team over the comm system. "We go in through 3 entry points. Alpha team takes the bridge, Beta team secures the engine room, Charlie team holds the docking bay. No prisoners unless they surrender immediately." Sergeant Danny Brooks led Alpha team, his demolition charges ready to blow holes in bulkheads. If needed, Corporal Kate Miller carried the heavy weapons, her plasma rifle capable of melting through alien armor. The rest of the Marines were armed with kinetic weapons that could punch through crystalline skin and powered armor. The docking clamps engaged with a soft thud that echoed through the Nightborne's hull. Morrison felt the vibration through the deck plates as the 2 ships locked together. On the main screen, he could see the alien vessel's hull glowing with internal lights, its crew completely unaware that their ship had been boarded. "Docking successful," Collins reported. "Seals are holding, atmosphere is stable." "Foster, you're cleared aboard," Morrison said into his communicator. "Understood, Captain." "Alpha team, move out." The Marines moved through the airlock into the alien ship, their boots silent on the polished metal floors. The corridors were wide and graceful, designed for beings who valued beauty over function. Soft lights glowed from the walls, creating patterns that were pleasing to alien eyes. It was more like walking through an art gallery than a military vessel. Brooks led his team toward the bridge, following the ship's schematics that Dr. Carter had analyzed. The aliens had built their vessels with predictable layouts, everything organized and logical. There were no defensive positions, no blast doors, no security checkpoints. The Zephyrians had never expected to fight battles inside their own ships. The first alien they encountered was a tall, elegant being with crystalline skin that sparkled in the corridor lights. It was wearing robes instead of armor, carrying what looked like a ceremonial staff rather than a weapon. The creature stared at the Marines in confusion, unable to understand what it was seeing. "Harmony of light through crystals greets the unknown beings," the alien said in perfect English. "Please identify yourselves according to the proper protocols." Brooks raised his rifle and fired 3 rounds into the alien's chest. The creature fell backward, its crystalline skin cracking like broken glass. Dark fluid leaked from the wounds, staining the beautiful floor. "No protocols," Brooks said. "No proper anything." The sound of gunfire echoed through the corridors, alerting the rest of the alien crew. Emergency lights began flashing, and a melodic alarm started playing throughout the ship. The Zephyrians were finally realizing they were under attack, but it was too late. Beta team, led by Corporal Miller, reached the engine room first. The space was filled with glowing crystals and humming machinery, all of it designed to look as beautiful as it was functional. Alien engineers worked at control panels, their movements graceful and precise. They looked up in surprise as the armored humans burst through the doorway. "Halt, unknown beings," one of the aliens called out. "You are violating the sacred laws of civilized conduct. Identify yourselves and state your grievances so they may be properly addressed." Miller opened fire with her plasma rifle, the energy beam cutting through the alien's torso. The creature collapsed, its crystalline skin melting from the heat. The other engineers screamed in harmonious voices, a sound like breaking glass mixed with wind chimes. "Secure the engine controls," Miller ordered her team. "Don't let any of them near the power systems." The Marines spread out through the engine room, systematically shooting down the alien crew. The Zephyrians were not fighters. They had no weapons, no training, no understanding of how to resist an armed assault. They died where they stood, their beautiful forms crumpling to the deck, on the bridge. Alpha team encountered stronger resistance. The alien command crew was protected by energy shields built into their stations, and some of them carried weapons that fired beams of coherent light. But the shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not the kinetic rounds that the Marines were using. Brooks threw a grenade into the center of the bridge, the explosion shattering the elegant control panels and sending crystalline debris flying through the air. The alien captain, a being that called itself Supreme Harmony of the Void, tried to activate the ship's self-destruct sequence, but Miller's team had already disabled the engine room controls. "You cannot do this," the alien captain said, its voice like music even in defeat. "We are beings of culture and civilization. We follow the ancient laws of honorable warfare. You are savages, primitives who know nothing of proper conduct." "You're right," Foster said, entering the bridge with her reserve squad. "We are savages. That's why we're going to win this war." She shot the alien captain in the head, ending its protests permanently. The rest of the bridge crew surrendered, their musical voices raised in harmonious pleas for mercy. Foster ignored them, focusing on the task at hand. "Brooks, get me access to their computer systems," she ordered. "I want everything, ship locations, supply schedules, fleet movements." "On it, Lieutenant," Brooks replied, connecting a human interface device to the alien computers. The crystalline systems were beautiful but not well protected. Within minutes, he had access to the entire alien data network back on the Nightborne. Morrison watched the assault through helmet cameras worn by his Marines. The entire boarding operation had taken less than 30 minutes. The aliens had been completely unprepared for human tactics, unable to adapt to close quarters combat. "Captain, we've secured the ship," Foster reported. "Casualties are light. 2 Marines with minor injuries, no deaths. The alien crew is either dead or captured." "What about the other ships in the convoy?" Morrison asked. "They're maintaining formation, but they're broadcasting distress signals." "They know something's wrong, but they don't know what to do about it." Morrison smiled grimly. The other alien ships were still following their protocols, waiting for proper authorization before taking action. They would not abandon their formation or break away from the convoy without orders from their superiors. It was exactly the kind of rigid thinking that made them vulnerable. "Secure the prisoners and download everything from their computers," Morrison ordered. "We've got about 10 minutes before the other ships figure out what happened." Dr. Carter joined the boarding team, her scientific equipment ready to analyze alien technology. The supply ship was full of advanced weapons and defensive systems, all of it designed with the same elegant beauty that marked everything the Zephyrians built. But beauty was not enough to win wars. "Their technology is impressive," Carter reported, examining an alien weapon. "But it's not designed for the kind of fighting we do. Everything assumes long-range combat between civilized opponents." The captured aliens were herded into a cargo hold, their crystalline forms shimmering with fear and confusion. They had never experienced warfare like this, never faced an enemy that ignored all the rules of civilized conduct. Their harmonious voices rose in protests about violated treaties and broken laws. "Captain," Foster said over the com, "we've got their complete battle plans. The aliens are planning a massive offensive against the human colonies. 300 ships, all gathering at a staging area in the Kepler system." Morrison felt cold satisfaction flow through him. The aliens thought they could exterminate humanity with overwhelming force and superior technology. They were about to learn that humans had always been good at turning the enemy's strength against them. "Download everything and prepare to detach," Morrison ordered. "We've got bigger prey to hunt." The Nightborne separated from the captured supply ship, leaving it drifting in space with its cargo holds emptied and its crew dead or imprisoned. The other alien ships in the convoy finally realized what had happened, but by then it was too late. The human ship had already vanished back into the darkness. Invisible to their sensors, the boarding had been a complete success, but it was only the beginning. The real war was about to start. The captured alien supply ship drifted in space like a broken jewel, its crystalline hull cracked and dark. Inside the Nightborne, Captain Morrison stood over the holographic display table, watching streams of alien data flow across the screen. Communications Officer Tony Reed worked frantically at his station, translating the enemy information into something humans could understand. "Captain, you need to see this," Reed said, his voice tight with excitement and fear. "The aliens have detailed plans for what they call the final cleansing. They're gathering the largest fleet in their history." Morrison leaned over the display, reading the translated text. The Zephyrians had been planning this operation for months, bringing together ships from across their empire. 300 vessels, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a planet. The fleet was assembling in the Kepler 442 system, a region of space the aliens believed was beyond human reach. When do they plan to attack? Morrison asked. According to this, they launched the offensive in 72 hours, Reed replied. They're targeting every human colony simultaneously. They want to end the war in a single coordinated strike. Dr. Helen Carter sat at another workstation, analyzing the alien technology they had captured from the supply ship. The Zephyrians had weapons that could slice through planetary shields, bombs that could crack the crust of a world, and ships that could travel faster than anything humans had built. It was enough firepower to exterminate the entire human race. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours in some areas, Carter reported, but it's all designed for their style of warfare. Long-range combat, formal engagements, battles between equals. They've never had to fight an enemy that uses deception and surprise. Morrison studied the star charts showing the alien fleet's location. The Kepler 442 system was deep in enemy territory, surrounded by Zephyrian colonies and military bases. No human ship had ever penetrated that far into alien space. It was the perfect place for the aliens to gather their forces without fear of discovery. Lieutenant Amy Foster entered the bridge, her armor still stained with alien blood from the boarding action. She carried a datapad filled with intelligence, gathered from the captured crew. The aliens had been very talkative once they realized their situation, eager to share information in exchange for what they believed would be merciful treatment. "What did you learn from the prisoners?" Morrison asked. "More than they probably intended to tell us," Foster replied. "The alien fleet commander is someone called Supreme Harmony of Stellar Wines. He's a religious fanatic who believes humans are an infection that must be removed from the galaxy." She activated her datapad, showing images of the alien fleet commander. He was tall even by Zephyrian standards, his crystalline skin carved with ritual scars that glowed with inner light. His eyes were the color of deep space, cold and empty of anything resembling mercy. He's convinced that this final battle will be remembered as the moment when civilization triumphed over chaos, Foster continued. "The aliens think they're saving the galaxy from human corruption." Morrison felt anger burning in his chest. The Zephyrians spoke of humans as if they were diseased animals that needed to be put down. They had destroyed entire colonies, killed millions of people, and now they planned to finish the job with overwhelming force. They thought humans were too primitive to understand the greater good. Chief Engineer Pete Collins joined them on the bridge, his hands dirty from working on the alien technology. He had been trying to integrate some of the captured systems into the Nightborne's existing equipment, looking for ways to improve their chances in the coming battle. "I've been studying their shield generators," Collins said. "The aliens use a quantum field that can deflect most energy weapons. But the system has a weakness. If you hit it with the right frequency, the whole thing collapses." "How do we generate that frequency?" Morrison asked. With this, Collins held up a small crystalline device taken from the supply ship. "It's part of their communication system, but I can modify it to disrupt their shields. The problem is range. We'd have to get close to their ships to make it work." Dr. Carter looked up from her analysis. "There's something else you should know about their fleet. The aliens are planning to use their ships in ceremonial formations during the attack. They want the destruction of humanity to be beautiful, artistic. They're more concerned with the appearance of their victory than with tactical efficiency." Morrison began to see the shape of a plan forming in his mind. The aliens were gathering their entire fleet in one location, arranging their ships in pretty patterns and following predictable protocols. They were so confident in their superiority that they had made themselves vulnerable to the kind of attack they would never expect. Navigator Lucy Adams worked at her station, plotting courses through enemy space. The journey to the Kepler 442 system would take the Nightborne through the heart of the Zephyrian Empire, past military bases and patrol fleets. It would be the most dangerous mission any human ship had ever attempted. The route is possible, Adams reported, but we'll have to travel through 17 different alien systems. If they detect us even once, we'll be surrounded by enemy forces. The stealth systems will hold, Collins said with more confidence than he felt. The aliens still don't know we exist. They think the attack on their supply ship was carried out by a larger force. Morrison turned to study the alien prisoners through the security monitors. They sat in the cargo hold, their crystalline forms glowing softly in the dim light. Even in captivity, they maintained their dignity, their voices rising in harmonious songs about their civilization's greatness. They truly believed they were superior to humanity in every way. The leader of the prisoners was a being called Harmony of Crystal Wains, a supply officer who had been responsible for coordinating the fleet's logistics. He had been eager to explain the righteousness of the alien cause, apparently thinking he could convert the humans to his way of thinking. The primitive ones do not understand, Harmony of Crystal Wains had said during his interrogation. We bring order to chaos, beauty to ugliness, civilization to savagery. The galaxy will be cleaner when your species is gone. Morrison had listened to the aliens' words with growing disgust. The Zephyrians spoke of genocide as if it were a public service, a necessary cleaning of the universe. They had convinced themselves that mass murder was actually an act of mercy, that they were saving the galaxy from human contamination. Captain, Reed said, his voice interrupting Morrison's thoughts, I'm picking up more alien communications. The supply convoy we attacked was supposed to report in an hour ago. Their fleet is starting to wonder what happened. Morrison made his decision. The Nightborne would travel to the Kepler 442 system and attack the alien fleet before they could launch their offensive. It was a suicide mission, one ship against 300, but it was the only chance humanity had. The aliens expected formal battles and honorable combat. They were about to face something very different. Set course for the Kepler 442 system, Morrison ordered. Maximum stealth, minimal energy signature. We're going to pay Supreme Harmony of Stellar Wines a visit. The bridge crew began preparing for the journey, each one understanding that they might not survive what was coming. The Nightborne was a powerful ship, but it was still just one vessel against the largest fleet in alien history. They would have to rely on surprise, cunning, and the enemy's own arrogance to have any chance of success. As the ship turned toward enemy space, Morrison thought about the colonies that would be destroyed if they failed. Millions of people were counting on them, even though they didn't know it. The Zephyrians had made their plans in secret, convinced that humans were too primitive to threaten their great fleet. The aliens were about to learn that primitive and desperate could be a very dangerous combination. The Nightborne slipped into hyperspace, carrying death toward the heart of the enemy empire. The war was about to reach its climax, and only one species would survive to see the end. The Nightborne emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, its black hull invisible against the backdrop of stars. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge, staring at the most terrifying sight he had ever witnessed. The alien fleet stretched across space like a glittering city, 300 ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns that caught the light from the system's twin suns. "My God," whispered Navigator Lucy Adams, her voice barely audible. "There are so many of them." Zephyrian vessels were works of art, their crystalline hulls shaped like flowers, spirals, and abstract sculptures. Each ship was unique, designed by master craftsmen who valued beauty above all else. The largest vessels were over 5 kilometers long, their surfaces covered with intricate carvings that told the story of alien civilization. It was the most beautiful fleet ever assembled, and it was here to destroy every human in the galaxy. Communications Officer Tony Reed monitored the alien transmissions, his equipment translating the musical language of the Zephyrians into words humans could understand. The enemy was broadcasting constantly, their voices filled with excitement and religious fervor as they prepared for what they called the Holy Cleansing. "They're holding ceremonies," Reed reported. "The fleet commander is giving speeches about the righteousness of their cause. They think they're about to save the galaxy from human corruption. Morrison watched the tactical display as it mapped the alien formations. The Zephyrians had arranged their ships in patterns that represented sacred symbols from their culture. The largest vessels formed the center of each formation, surrounded by smaller ships in perfect symmetry. It was beautiful and ceremonial. Exactly what you would expect from a civilization that treated war as a religious ritual. "They're making themselves targets," said Chief Tactical Officer Lisa Hayes, studying the enemy positions. "Those formations look impressive, but they're tactically useless. If we can break one formation, the others will be too far away to provide support." Dr. Helen Carter worked at her science station, analyzing the alien fleet through long-range sensors. The Zephyrians had brought their most advanced warships, vessels capable of cracking planets and burning solar systems. The firepower assembled in this system could destroy Earth's entire colonial fleet 10 times over. "Their shields are at full power," Carter reported. "But they're using the same frequency on every ship. If we can disrupt one shield generator, we can disrupt them all." Chief Engineer Pete Collins had been working around the clock to modify the captured alien technology. The crystalline device they had taken from the supply ship was now integrated into the Nightborne's weapon systems, ready to turn the enemy's own tools against them. "The shield disruptor is online," Collins said. "But we'll need to get within 5,000 kilometers to make it work. That means flying right into the middle of their fleet." Morrison nodded. The plan was simple and insane. The Nightborne would use its stealth systems to penetrate the alien formations, plant quantum charges on key vessels, and then activate the shield disruptor to leave the entire fleet vulnerable. It was the kind of desperate gamble that only worked in stories, but it was the only chance they had. Lieutenant Amy Foster stood ready with her Marines, their powered armor loaded with enough explosives to cripple a dozen ships. The boarding teams would have to work fast, planting charges and retreating before the aliens could respond. It was a suicide mission, but every Marine had volunteered. "Remember," Foster told her teams over the comm system, "we're not trying to capture these ships. We're here to break them. Hit the reactor cores, the shield generators, anything that will cause secondary explosions." The Nightborne moved deeper into the alien fleet, slipping between the massive vessels like a shadow. The stealth systems bent, light around the hull, making the ship invisible to enemy sensors. Morrison held his breath as they passed within a few hundred meters of a Zephyrian battleship, its crystalline surface so close he could see the individual carvings. The alien crews were busy with their preparations, loading weapons and running. "Final system checks," they sang while they worked, their voices creating harmonies that echoed through their ships. It was like listening to a choir of angels preparing for Mass. Murder de Supreme Harmony of Stellar Wine stood on the bridge of his flagship, a massive vessel shaped like a blooming flower. He was tall and elegant, his crystalline skin carved with sacred symbols that glowed with inner light. His voice carried across the fleet as he gave his final speech before the attack. "Children of the Crystal Path," the alien commander said. His words translated by Reed's equipment. "Today we cleanse the galaxy of a great infection. The primitive humans have spread their chaos and violence across the stars, corrupting everything they touch. We will end their suffering and restore order to the universe." Morrison felt sick listening to the aliens' words. The Zephyrians had convinced themselves that genocide was mercy, that destroying humanity was an act of compassion. They spoke of millions of dead humans as if they were doing them a favor. "The human disease ends today," Supreme Harmony of Stellar Wines continued. "Their colonies will burn, their ships will shatter, and their species will be remembered only as a cautionary tale. The galaxy will be beautiful again." The alien fleet began to move, the formations shifting like dancers in a cosmic ballet. Each ship took its assigned position with perfect precision, following choreography that had been practiced for months. The Zephyrians treated warfare as performance art, more concerned with the beauty of their movements than with tactical advantage. "They're beginning their attack approach," Hayes reported. The fleet is moving toward the jump point that will take them to human space. Morrison knew they had to act now before the aliens could leave the system. Once the fleet reached human colonies, nothing would be able to stop them. The Nightborne was humanity's last hope, one small ship against an armada of giants. Collins, how long before we can activate the shield disruptor? We need to get closer to the flagship, Collins replied. The disruptor has to be within direct line of sight of their main shield generator. The Nightborne accelerated toward the center of the alien formation, its engines running silent. The stealth systems were working perfectly, keeping them hidden from enemy sensors. But Morrison knew their luck could not last forever. One mistake, one sensor sweep at the wrong moment, and the entire alien fleet would converge on them. "Captain," Reed said suddenly, "I'm picking up something strange. The aliens are detecting small power fluctuations in their formation. They don't know what's causing it, but they're starting to investigate." Morrison felt cold fear in his stomach. The Nightborne's stealth systems were not perfect. The ship was generating tiny energy signatures that the aliens' sensitive instruments were beginning to notice. It was only a matter of time before they figured out what was happening. "How long do we have?" Morrison asked. "Maybe 10 minutes before they locate us," Reed replied. "Their sensor sweeps are getting more intensive." Foster's Marines were already moving through the ship's docking tubes, ready to board the alien vessels. The charges were armed and ready, each one powerful enough to cripple a battleship. But they would need time to plant them properly, time they might not have. "Foster, prepare for emergency deployment," Morrison ordered. "We're going to have to do this fast." The Nightborne reached the heart of the alien formation, surrounded by enemy ships on all sides. The flagship loomed ahead of them, its crystalline hull gleaming with power. Inside that ship, Supreme Harmony of Stellar Wines was giving final orders to his fleet, preparing to launch the attack that would end human civilization. Morrison looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all volunteers, men and women who had chosen to risk everything for a chance to save their species. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew that someone had to try. "All stations, prepare for combat," Morrison said. "We're about to show these aliens what humans do when they're cornered." The hunt was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Morrison pressed the activation button on his command console, and across the alien fleet, 50 quantum charges exploded simultaneously. The beautiful formations of the Zephyrian Armada became death traps as ships collided with each other, their crystalline hulls shattering like glass. Secondary explosions rippled through the fleet as fuel lines ruptured and weapon systems overloaded. The silence of space was broken by the crackling of superheated metal and the final transmissions of dying alien crews. The perfect geometric patterns that had taken months to arrange dissolved into chaos within seconds. Ships that had been works of art became twisted wreckage, their elegant curves melted and broken. "Shield disruptor is active," Chief Engineer Pete Collins reported. "Their defensive systems are collapsing across the entire fleet." The Nightborne dropped its stealth systems and appeared like a ghost materializing from darkness. The black ship hung in space above the alien flagship, its weapon systems charging with deadly energy. The captured alien technology that Collins had integrated into their systems began to glow with crystalline light. Supreme Harmony of Stellar Wines stood on his bridge, staring in horror at the destruction of his beautiful fleet. His voice rose in a harmonious wail of despair as he watched centuries of alien craftsmanship burning around him. The sacred formations that were supposed to bring glory to the Zephyrian people had become funeral pyres. "Impossible," the alien commander sang in his musical language. "No primitive species could achieve this level of destruction." The sacred patterns were perfect, the formations blessed by the crystal prophets themselves. Communications Officer Tony Reed translated the alien's words for Morrison, who listened with cold satisfaction. The Zephyrians still did not understand what they were facing. They thought their defeat was some kind of accident, a fluke that violated the natural order of the universe. "Tell him this is what happens when you underestimate humans," Morrison sighed. The Nightborne's experimental weapon systems opened fire, their beams enhanced by alien technology. The energy blasts carved through enemy ships like a hot knife through ice, penetrating shields that were supposed to be impenetrable. The aliens had built their defenses to stop conventional weapons. Not the hybrid human-alien systems that Collins had created. Lieutenant Amy Foster led her Marines onto the alien flagship through multiple breaching points. The powered armor suits moved through the elegant corridors like Black Death, their weapons cutting down alien crew members, who still thought this was some kind of misunderstanding that could be resolved through proper diplomatic channels. "Surrender according to the ancient protocols," pleaded one alien officer as Foster's team reached the bridge. "We invoke the sacred laws of civilized warfare. Quarter must be given to those who yield with honor." Foster shot the alien in the chest, watching its crystalline body crack and fall. No quarter, no mercy, no honor, just death. The alien crew members screamed in their musical voices, the sound like breaking wind chimes mixed with the cries of dying birds. They had never experienced warfare like this, never faced an enemy that ignored every rule of civilized conduct. Their beautiful civilization had no defense against pure savagery. Sergeant Danny Brooks and his demolition team moved through the ship's vital systems, planting charges on reactor cores and weapon controls. The aliens tried to stop them, but their ceremonial weapons were no match for human military technology. The Zephyrians had spent so long living in peace that they had forgotten how to fight. "Reactor charges set," Brooks reported over the comm. "This ship will be space dust in 5 minutes." Morrison watched the tactical display as his ship continued its deadly work. The alien fleet was scattering in panic, their formations broken and their command structure in ruins. Ships that had never fired their weapons in anger were trying to flee, but the Nightborne was faster and deadlier than anything they had ever encountered. Dr. Helen Carter monitored the alien communications from her science station, listening to the chaos spreading through their ranks. The Zephyrians were broadcasting desperate messages to each other, trying to understand what was happening to their invincible armada. "They're calling for reinforcements," Carter reported, "but their nearest fleet is 3 days away. They're completely alone out here." The Nightborne moved through the alien formations like a predator among sheep, striking without warning and vanishing before return fire could be coordinated. Morrison had studied every lesson of human warfare, from ancient battles to modern space combat. The aliens had studied art and philosophy and the proper way to conduct civilized war. It was not enough. Supreme Harmony of Stellar Wines tried desperately to rally his remaining ships, his voice carrying across the comm channels in increasingly frantic harmonies. He ordered counterattacks, defensive formations, coordinated retreats, but his crews were too panicked to follow complex orders. The beautiful civilization that had dominated the galaxy for millennia was falling apart under the assault of one primitive ship. "Children of Crystal," the alien commander sang, "remember your training. Form the sacred circle of defense. Channel the power of the ancient ways. The primitive humans cannot stand against the glory of our civilization." But his words fell on deaf ears. The alien crews were abandoning their ships, fleeing in escape pods toward the outer system. The few vessels that tried to fight back found their weapons useless against the Nightborne's enhanced shields and superior maneuverability. Morrison brought his ship alongside another alien battleship, its crystalline hull cracked and bleeding. Atmosphere. The vessel was beautiful even in death, its surfaces carved with intricate patterns that told stories of alien mythology. In a few minutes it would be nothing but expanding gas and twisted metal. "Captain," Foster reported from inside. "The alien flagship. We've captured their strategic databases. The aliens have detailed records of every human colony, every defensive position, every weakness in our defenses." "Download everything and prepare for extraction," Morrison ordered. "We've got what we came for." The Marines fought their way back to the Nightborne as the alien flagship began to break apart around them. The reactor charges exploded in sequence, tearing the massive vessel apart from the inside. Supreme Harmony of Stellar Wines went down with his ship, His final transmission a mournful song about the end of beauty in the universe. Within 6 hours, the greatest alien fleet in history was reduced to burning wreckage drifting through space. Less than 50 ships managed to escape, their crews traumatized by an enemy that fought like demons from their darkest nightmares. The sacred formations were gone, the blessed patterns destroyed, the holy war turned into a massacre. Morrison stood on the bridge of the Nightborne, watching the destruction with grim satisfaction. The aliens had wanted to exterminate humanity because they believed humans were primitive and savage. They had been right about the savage part, but they had failed to understand that sometimes savagery was exactly what the universe required. "Captain?" Reed said, monitoring the fleeing alien ships. "They're broadcasting warnings to their home fleets. They're telling them to stay away from human space, that we're too dangerous to fight." "Good," Morrison replied. "Let them spread the word. Let them tell their people what happens when you try to exterminate the human race." The few surviving alien vessels disappeared into hyperspace, carrying news of their defeat back to the Zephyrian Empire. The message they would deliver was simple. Humans were not the primitive savages they appeared to be. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors who would do anything, become anything, sacrifice anything to protect their species. The war was over. Humanity had won not through superior technology or greater numbers, but through the willingness to embrace the darkness that civilized species feared to touch. The Zephyrians would remember this day as the moment they learned that some species survived not because they were noble, but because they were willing to become monsters when necessary. The UES Nightborne had joined the war, and the aliens had burned in silence, their beautiful civilization reduced to ash and memory. The galaxy belonged to the humans now, and everyone would know it.